Thank you all for coming. It is really good to be here with you. I'm going to stand over here because I surprised the IT guys with some slides at the last minute, and I'll flip them myself here so they don't have to worry about that. But I would like to make sure that we start with an appropriate one, so let's go here. My job today is just to talk for a couple of minutes with my views on diversity in general and a little bit about inclusion, and then we'll get to the real conversation where we can talk specifics on anything you'd like to talk about. And Deanna will come up and help me with that and run the show from the stage as soon as I'm done. So I think anytime you talk about diversity, it starts by trying to decide what is diversity. And I'll tell you this, we tend to define it really broadly and then measure it really narrowly. We tend to almost everywhere in government have an organizational definition of diversity that is really incredibly inclusive of all different categories, things, backgrounds, languages, social sets, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then we measure what we see. And that's all we measure. And I think that's something that is a problem that I hope you guys can fix over time in our government, because it's something that's got to change. My experience in congressional hearings, just as a small example, is that anytime diversity became a discussion area, the discussion was only about women and minorities, period. There was no other discussion about diversity of any other kind, and typically it was only of women and minorities in leadership positions, not of anything more broadly structured than that. And I think that's something we have got to change if we want to really get after this in government. Because when you take those snapshots of diversity, they can be very, very misleading. Let me give you just one minor example here. I don't know how well you can see this, but does this look like a very diverse panel? This is the leadership of the United States Air Force, 3-star and 4-star generals, all of our major commanders, about a year ago today. And if you look at this picture, you go, man, there's a lot of white men in that group, a couple of women sitting in the middle. If this picture had been taken 3 months earlier, same positions, there would have been 3 less white males, there would have been another woman 4-star, and there'd have been 2 black 4-stars in the picture. They're actually still in uniform, they're just in other jobs now. Would that have made this look more diverse? Depends on what you're looking for. The other thing, if I pointed out that one of the people in this picture who looks like a white male is actually an American Indian, and one's Hispanic, and one immigrated when he was 3 from Eastern Europe along with his parents, would that make it look more diverse to you? Depending on what you're looking for. And I mention this only to give you the idea that you have to be careful about snapshots. Diversity must be measured over time, and it must be measured from all the perspectives that you include in your definition, or it gives you a false picture of either your success or your failures. Really important as you guys go off into the world and start building diversity programs and managing them. So my recommendation is that while you need to define it, don't get too hung up on that definition, because you will know if your organization is diverse or not. You'll feel it, you'll hear it, you'll sense it. You'll see it as well, but it's not just what you see. Please don't get sucked into that particular shortfall. I happen to love this quote from Malcolm Forbes, because I think the biggest question when you talk about diversity is, why is it important? Not what it is, but why is it so important? I think Forbes figured it out. I believe diversity gives your organization perspective. I believe it improves your ability to solve problems. I believe it helps to see opportunities and to see them more clearly than you could if you weren't diverse. I also think it enables you to see them much sooner than you would have seen them otherwise. It makes your team stronger, it makes your team more effective, it makes your team more efficient, it makes your team more successful, it makes your team more confident. And I think it enables better learning, better performance, and better success over time. It also allows better service. And kind of a hidden benefit of diversity is that it allows you to balance your biases. And your organizational biases are really nothing more than the sum of your individual biases. And this is really an important point for everybody to be thinking about. Anybody in here think you don't have personal biases? Be honest with me. Anybody think you're open, honest, respect all people all the time, understand the differences? This is Larry Spencer. Larry's the president of a company right now, and he sits on a couple of major boards as well. He's a very successful guy. Before he put on a suit, he worked for me as my number 2 in my last job. He was a retired 4-star general as well. Larry grew up in Southeast D.C. Now, I grew up in a Texas family with all the social Klingons that come with that. I grew up all over the world. Larry grew up in one place, Southeast D.C., murder capital of the world, the whole time he was growing up. Larry and I are very similar professionally, and we are completely different personally, which I didn't even know because I'd known him for years until we started working together every day. And I'll just give you small examples. Every time either one of us who thought we were pretty big thinking, pretty well related to people, we thought we understood what motivated people, how to reward them, what would affect them, what would inspire them, what would depress them. We thought we were pretty understanding about that, each in our own way. And we found out that when we thought something would be something very interesting to people, I might say, what a great plan, and Larry would go, that's not going to work at all. Or he'd say, this is the way to motivate people, and I'd go, that's not going to motivate anybody. It's just going to piss them off. And we would have these debates over and over and over again, and the startling thing to us was how different we were. And we'd never known it until we really began to engage on things that made a difference to the people around us. It was a remarkable, remarkable experience for me, because I believe that together we tended to see a very different reality than we saw individually, which is a really important thing about diversity. I think together we were much better than we were individually as leaders. And I think the organization was much more successful because we were together. It made the team stronger because we were different. That's what diversity is all about in my mind. Diversity really starts with valuing the individual. All the program stuff's cool. All the charts you can read, all the program narrative that people put together is interesting. But diversity starts with valuing the individual. You matter. You matter. And so does everybody else sitting in this room. But for you to believe that, the people around you have to believe it, or you'll never convince yourself. So here's what I think you guys need to think about. If you don't feel that the people around you do believe that, I think you should convince them that they're wrong. I talk a lot about controlling your world. I don't care how big or how small that world is, you have to control it. And I think that you must value diversity in your world in all its forms. I think you have to diversify your world. You have to surround yourself with difference. You have to find new people, new ideas, new experiences, and you have to embrace them. It sounds really simple. It's not. It sounds comfortable. It's not. But you're the only one who can do this. Look for diversity around you every day. Acknowledge it. Celebrate it. And when you're in a position to do so, reward it. Or you can't create diversity. And I think the way I try and remember for myself is, in my world, I am the Chief Diversity Officer. All day, every day. I decide what's acceptable and what's not. I decide who I value and who I don't. I decide what opinions I want to hear, what things I want to share, what I value. I would encourage you to do the same thing, because if you do, the world around you starts to grow, and it becomes more diverse, and it becomes more successful. You know, if you're going to build a diversity program, for those of you who are going to go on and do that someday, building it in an organization isn't a weekend project. I think you know that. It's more like a generational project. It takes a long period of time. It's literally a journey, and it requires leadership and organizational commitment, and it requires a map. That's what diversity plans are. It's just a roadmap to where you want to go. You have to start with deciding where you're trying to go. What are you trying to accomplish? What are your objectives? You know, everything on this chart is interesting. You can make all these objectives. You can pick a couple of them. You can slice them any way you want, but you got to decide what you're looking for. Are you looking for numbers of something? More PhDs from the Ivy League. More undergrad students coming to the Bush School from out of state. More international students. What is it you're looking for? And that depends on what your organization, your school values. You've got to look at your leadership team. Is that what your objective is, to make your leadership team look different? Remember the snapshot. That doesn't mean it's a bad goal. It just means you remember where you're trying to go and measure it over time. Are you looking to change the makeup and percentages of different groups inside your new recruits, to your faculty, your staff, your student body? What are you trying to do? And are you going to just measure the things you can see, or are you going to make the commitment to the less obvious diversity factors as being equally important and be willing to take the heat that that's what you're doing? Because other people won't understand that, by the way, and they'll criticize you for it. All of this is what drives the things you measure. And the simple fact is that if you don't do all those things, if you don't make a broad, comprehensive plan and you don't measure it, you'll fail. There's thousands of examples of that around the world. I can point to organization after organization that said all the right things and hasn't taken a step in the right direction. The reason you have to think carefully through this is that, especially in government, many of the rules and the policies that you'll work with in diversity programs seem to be intended to make the diversity journey as difficult as it possibly can be. Objective numbers or percentages, for example, can be seen as quotas. And quotas in some categories are illegal. They're against the law, or they're against policy. I'll give you an example. When I first took over my last job, the first appointment I made in that job was the new superintendent of the Air Force Academy. I sent a lady named Michelle Johnson there. She's a lieutenant general, a 3-star in our Air Force. Michelle's a pretty good candidate for this job. When she was a cadet here, she was the cadet wing commander, so she was the #1 military cadet in the organization. She was a Rhodes Scholar, and she was an All-American in basketball. That's pretty strong in all 3 mission areas of the Air Force Academy. And she's a remarkable, remarkable human being and leader. She's been phenomenal. The first task I gave her when she got there was to up the number of women in the next class that came into the academy by 8%, from 22% to 30%. I'm a believer that if you can get to 30 to 35% of the people in an institution to be women as opposed to men, a lot of the frustrating problems you deal with day to day in discrimination, harassment, even assault start to die off, because that's been the experience of other organizations in government and business and in academia. And so we wanted to get to 30%. 4 years later, I left the job. They're still not there. Not because nobody wants to go there. Everybody wants to go there. But all the rules say you can't establish quotas, you can't set goals, you can't use numbers. All the lawyers fought us. It took 2.5 years before we made any progress at all. And then we only made it because I said, I'll sign a memo saying we're going to do it, and you can try me later. Yeah, not really funny. So here's my recommendation to you, and this is one you're going to have to decide on your own. If you want to talk about diversity, don't be the leader who talks about it and isn't willing to take some risk to create it. Don't be that person. And if you're going to be, just don't talk about it. It'll be easier on you. But you got to be careful, because that risk should be with the rules, with the policy, trying to change the law. It shouldn't be with the institution. I have had bosses who have repeatedly told me, if we're going to change diversity, we have to take a chance on some people. And they wanted to put people who weren't qualified into jobs in the institution that would have hurt the institution. And I disagreed with them and fought them. Because the worst thing you can do is put an unqualified person into a job if what you're trying to do is promote diversity. There's not a minority or a woman in this room who wants to be put into a job because they're a minority or a woman. They just want to be able to compete fairly. So create diverse job slates as you go to look at candidates. Interview everybody with an open mind, and in my view, ties go to diversity. But there's a risk in that, a personal risk you'll have to accept. I would encourage you to accept it. I've never regretted it for a second. Inclusion's different than diversity. Deanna highlighted that just a minute ago. But without it, as she said, diversity really won't do much for you. Every member of an organization, every member of this college, for example, must feel empowered. You got to feel enabled. You've got to feel like you're part of the team. You've got to feel like your participation, your input is valued, that your voice is listened to. If I look around this room, let me do a stupid thing here. Let me have Ray Robertson, will you stand up for a minute? Where'd Ray go? I thought I saw Ray in the back. Okay, Will, you're going to have to fill in for him. I thought I saw him there. Will you stand up for a second? Okay, give me a student, any student. Any first years here? Yeah, stand up, bud. And how about a member of the staff? Where's somebody? Okay, there you go. Thanks, Janine. And then I'll stand up too. So there's 4 of us up, and there's Clyde the cameraman, who's a hero, by the way. He does a lot of this stuff for us. So there's 5 of us standing. Which of us is most important to the Bush School? Let me ask the question a different way. If we're trying to tell the story to our graduate community, to the rest of the university, to the world around us, that we believe diversity is important, and we want to tell that story today, who's the most important person? He's standing in the back of the room. If we want to make sure that everybody who comes into this school over time, who touches every student who comes into their department, who makes sure the students feel like that matters, that they're here, that we're here to help you, who's going to be that person? That's Janine. If you want to prepare the students who are sitting here today to go face the world of service that you're trying to go face, and you want to be well prepared, well educated, and understand both the reality and the theory of the world you're going to work in, it's Ray. Excuse me, Ray. I'm stuck on Ray. I thought I saw Ray on the lobby. It's Will. And if we want to really look at who's going to add value to the reputation of the Bush School over time, it's you. Because great colleges are measured by their product over time. So who's most important? Nobody is. On any given day, everybody in this room could be the most important person in the Bush School. And during the course of your lifetime, each of you will be the most important person in this room. I don't know the scenario, I don't know the circumstances, but it's going to happen. And when it does, you should step into that role comfortably, because everybody around you has made you feel like you are the most important person, because you deserve to be treated that way. That's all diversity and inclusion means to me. Guys, thank you for standing. Please sit down. Will, my apologies for butchering your name twice. That's inexcusable. Let me just finish with this. When it comes to creating a climate that values diversity and insists on inclusion, I think you got to remember that there's no Switzerland. There is no neutral position. You're either part of the solution or you're part of the problem. You choose. One of the things I think you got to remember is that if you're going to be successful in government service, this idea of diversity and inclusion has to be part of your professional DNA if you're going to be successful. It's not a program. It's a way of life. Just start living it. And I think most of you have. That's why you're here. That's why you want to serve. But this stuff will make you better. Talk about it. Preach about it if you need to. But make sure that world around you demonstrates it over and over and over again. It's what you got to do to be successful. And let us know how we can help.